Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's the News. We're going to start with some updates on food and FDA changes. Then, we're going to move into some national news, and later, we'll head overseas. I want to start this week off talking about food. Food is great. More specifically, the FDA. The Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again policy has had a new shift. Any food that does not use petroleum based dyes can now use the phrase no artificial colors, even if the dye is not from a natural source. Apparently, colors that were derived from natural food sources were also being referred to as artificial, which has been causing complications for companies seeking to try food coloring alternatives. Now, this change comes after the FDA Commissioner, Marty Makary, announced that the FDA is seeking to eliminate petroleum based dyes in food and drinks across the United States. The FDA has been working quickly to phase out certain synthetic food coloring, replacing them with natural alternatives. As mentioned earlier, some natural dyes were banned from being included in the no artificial colors label. The FDA has already specifically approved beetroot red and also expanded the uses of spirulina to create blue and green coloring for different food and drinks. A total of 6 natural dyes have been approved as of today. A few companies have also already promised to eliminate synthetic dyes from their products over the next few years, including Kraft Heinz, General Mills, and PepsiCo. Now, you may wonder, why have products been allowed to use the no artificial colors label even if the dye is not naturally sourced? I wonder the same thing. However, change that happens in phases tends to be change that lasts. Natural dyes need to be approved by the FDA before they can be added into products, and the approval process can take several months to several years. It's possible that if companies went from the loosey goosey rules with all sorts of chemicals in the products to a rigid system where they could only have naturally sourced ingredients, the whole food industry would crash. So, although it does seem kind of backwards that non naturally sourced dyes are still currently allowed under the no artificial colors label, a small step in the right direction is still a step, on top of the fact that most people do not handle change well. And as soon as people know in their mind that their favorite soda, Fanta, is going to be a more natural shade of orange, they automatically reject the product because it's different from what they're used to. Therefore, we have to take things in baby steps. Fortunately, they are steps in the right direction. Now, another product that arguably has worse ingredients than artificial dyes is the Chips Ahoy Baked Bites. These brownie bites have been recalled by the FDA because of an apparent error during the mixing process where small clumps of cornstarch formed, which can be a choking hazard. If you have purchased or were planning on purchasing these, please be aware. Hopefully, your local grocer did their due diligence and removed the product from the shelves. However, they are not responsible for what you put in your mouth. 3 additional products are also being recalled: Swiss chocolate cake mix, spice cake mix, and bread and roll mix, all by Betty Crocker. Apparently, the products do not state the presence of milk in the ingredients. Because milk is considered one of the 9 major food allergens, this qualifies the product as potentially causing serious adverse health consequences or death. Again, Hopefully, your local grocers have done their due diligence and removed the product from the shelves. However, your awareness keeps you and your family safe and healthy. Speaking of grocery stores, in Los Angeles, an elderly woman, allegedly 92 years of age, hit a bicyclist and then lost control of her vehicle and drove directly into a 99 Ranch Market. Three victims were trapped under the vehicle and unfortunately lost their lives. An additional four people were taken to the hospital with varying injuries. The cyclist had minor injuries but was released from the hospital and is currently healing. The driver is said to be cooperating with the investigation, and we're wishing the families of the victims peace during this difficult time and a speedy recovery for the victims. Also in California, Assembly Bill 1421 has cleared the California Assembly and is now headed towards the Senate. What is this bill, might you ask? AB 1421 was created to discover new ways for lawmakers to raise funding, in other words, tax citizens for transportation costs. The rise in electric cars on the roads has, by default, reduced the amount of gas cars on the road, therefore, causing a significant effect on gas taxes. One potential proposition would charge people a tax based on the amount of miles they drive. California currently collects 61 cents per gallon in gas taxes for alleged road maintenance and infrastructure. The average state gas tax in the US is around 33 cents. That's nearly two times the amount. Living in California makes you ask a lot of whys. Now we move to Arizona. A helicopter operated by the Arizona Department of Public Safety crashed while providing tactical air support and assisting the Flagstaff Police Department and other law enforcement agencies. During the incident, both the pilot and trooper were on board were killed. They were assisting the police department with an active shooting. There were no other injuries reported due to the incident, fortunately. In Texas, a boy aged 10 was detained after a girl aged 13 was found stabbed to death. Officers from the Houston Police Department responded to reports of a sizable fight outside of an apartment complex. After reaching the complex, the boy admitted to having stabbed the girl in self-defense. It's believed that the fight stemmed from an altercation that originated at school earlier in the day. This is currently still under investigation, and in Texas, the minimum age for juvenile criminal responsibility is 10 years of age. The age of violent crime has decreased significantly over the last several years. In these kind of situations, it's easy to say, where were the parents? And I would have to agree. A lot of parents nowadays, people in general, are short, curt, and borderline verbally assaulting to their children. And I mean, a lot of people verbally assault each other in general. And children are like sponges. The way that we speak to them is how they think that it's okay to speak to other people. And when we react emotionally, we show them that it's okay for them to react emotionally in situations as well. Monkey see, monkey do. And most people used to have a similar moral compass, and we lived in communities where if we saw a child misbehaving, we would correct the child. But parents now get offended when another functional adult corrects their child. And I'm just curious, are you upset because someone else is mature enough to correct your child? Or are you upset because you lack the maturity to do so? Now we're going to hop over to the East Coast, where in Pennsylvania, an Olive Garden cook was rushed to the hospital for diving headfirst into a deep fryer. This was thought to be a suicide attempt. Emergency services were called moments before the incident because the employee was undressing and harming himself. Due to the fact that this was suicide related, further details are protected from being released out of respect for the individuals involved. States have begun implementing the work requirements for SNAP recipients. The new requirement states that adults are subject to a 3-month SNAP limit unless they work at least 20 hours a week, participate in training, or qualify for some other exemption. This law was a part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was passed in July 2025. One benefit of this was that the age range of able bodied adults without dependents was increased to people 64 years of age. This law does end exceptions that were created for homeless people, veterans, and certain former foster youth up to age 24. States will also have tighter waiver rules. The new law makes it a policy that anyone who is able bodied and is not working, training, or exempt will have SNAP benefits for only 3 months in a 3-year period. Many states have already started to implement the new SNAP laws, and others have the laws scheduled to start in the near future. There are some arguments against the law because of the fact that not all disabilities qualify for exemptions, and sometimes disability determinations can take several years. In Memphis, a woman recorded and reported a U.S. Marshal for kicking her small dog. The gentleman was wearing a protective vest with U.S. Marshal on the back and turned from an open doorway and kicked the animal as it was running outside. The footage is even more problematic due to the fact that there's been so much attention on law enforcement lately. There's also major concern over how officers interact with animals and with the public in general. If you currently own a green card, you will no longer be eligible to apply for SBA loans starting next month. The new policy states that green card holders are not able to own any percentage interest as an applicant or borrower. Even if a minimum of 1% of a business is owned by a green card holder, a business will be automatically ineligible for an SBA loan. In New York, Mamdani was speaking to the public and making reference to the Quran and implying that we should follow its teachings. You can check it out here.
The story of the Hijrah reminds us that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a stranger too, who fled Mecca and was welcomed in Medina. Surah An-Nahl 1642 tells us, "As for those who immigrated in the cause of Allah after being persecuted, we will surely bless them with a good home in this world." Or as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Islam began as something strange and will go back to being strange. So glad tidings to the strangers."
So we've discussed this before, and I will continue to say, we raised hell about God and Jesus being discussed and fought for neither to be used in relation to our government. And now, a mere 24 and barely a half years later, the somehow mayor of New York, the city that was terrorized by some people who do pray from the Quran, we're now being taught lessons by the same Quran. Either we're hypocrites or we simply lack awareness. I personally would much rather listen to people talk about Jesus in a country built on Judeo Christian principles than watch someone parade Muhammad and the Quran on national public television. Fortunately, at an event coming up on May 17th, Trump has announced that he will host an event on the National Mall where Americans will be welcome to rededicate America as one nation under God. He's placing public prayer and religious expression at the forefront of his agenda. This is America's 250th anniversary, so it comes at a great time. The last story that we'll cover from the States is that apparently fans of Nicki Minaj are claiming that they will be following her and shifting right and supporting the Trump administration. This comes as quite a surprise, as most celebrities tend to be publicly in support of the left. I don't personally know how I feel about celebrities and influencers telling or suggesting who their fans should vote for. Again, it removes accountability and can prevent people from developing their own standards and morals and thinking long enough to develop an opinion that they form from a place of integrity. Anyways, it's definitely a touchy subject. However, I think we can respect the generations before who taught us to keep certain things private, holding things with dignity rather than displaying everything. And now it's our duty to truly discern what deserves reverence and conversation. So many people have lost friends and family due to conversations revolving around religion and politics. And it's quite sad. There used to be a higher level of respect for differences than there is now. And people jump to conclusions based off of an opinion that you might hold. And I think there is space for healthy conversation around these topics. However, healthy conversations require emotionally mature, independent minds who are not simply swayed by words. Now we're going to take a trip across the pond to Europe. So, I'm not going to pretend that I know all of the details about the Russia Ukraine war. However, it has been happening for nearly 4 years at this point. It's currently understood that Russian casualties are around 1.2 million, and Ukrainian casualties are anywhere between 500,000 to 600,000. I've met several people from the Ukraine over the last few years, and they seem to be okay, and their families are also okay. But there are many families suffering from both the Ukraine and Russia. And here in the States, we're so displaced from war, thank God, so we don't fully understand the impact that it can have. This past week, Russia and Ukraine were scheduled to have peace talks in Abu Dhabi. And literally a day prior to these talks, Russia sent a barrage of missiles to the Ukraine. These warheads were aimed towards Ukraine's power grid. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky alleges that Russia is seeking to deny civilians light, heating, and running water amid the coldest winter in years. At least 10 people were wounded from this barrage, and the recent talks between Russia and Ukraine have been considered constructive. However, the Trump administration is still seeking solutions for various issues. The Trump administration has also given both Russia and Ukraine a June deadline to resolve the conflict. And if they don't have a resolution by then, the Trump administration will begin adding pressure to both sides. In Paris, Elon Musk's ex offices were raided as a part of an initial investigation into a range of alleged offenses, including spreading child sexual abuse images, and deepfakes. The investigation was originally opened in January 2025, and since then, Elon Musk and a former CEO have been asked to attend interviews in addition to several employees being summoned as witnesses. The prosecutor of the case says that at this point, the investigation is currently in a constructive stage, and they're just hoping to ensure that the X platform is complying with French law. In Islamabad, Pakistan, a suicide bomber targeted a Shiite mosque, killing around 30 people and injuring around 200 additional people. Terrorist attacks are rare in Islamabad. However, there has recently been a surge in militant attacks across the country. No group has yet claimed responsibility for this attack. However, it's thought that it was either the Pakistani Taliban or the Islamic State group, which has been known to carry out previous attacks on Shiite worshippers who are a minority in the country. The preliminary investigation suggests the suicide bomber had been moving back and forth between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Pakistani Taliban is said to have been growing in recent years due to the Taliban seizing power again in August 2021 as American troops withdrew after the 20-year war. Terrorism has no place in the world. In Nigeria, armed Islamist militants killed at least 160 people during attacks on two different villages. There have been several military operations against terrorist cells in the state recently, and these attacks are said to be revenge or expression of frustration. Nigeria is gripped by an insurgence of Islamist militants who kidnap people and hold them for ransom, in addition to terror attacks on civilians throughout the nation. The US has sent a small team of military officers to assist in the crisis. Now to Iran. Iran designated the armed forces of European countries as terrorist organizations. This is simply a tit for tat move, as the countries that were designated are the same countries that just recently designated the IRGC a terrorist organization. But this is all a part of the game that Iran chooses to play. Iran sent multiple drones towards US naval ships and they were shot down. Different days, different occasions, however, they were shot down accordingly. Iran at one point also wanted to delay the scheduled meeting. Why does Iran do these things? To create chaos and confusion amongst their enemies. Because if you can seemingly cause confusion and discombobulation among your enemies, then first of all, you think that you can delay them. And second of all, should you attack them, they'll have no solid foundation to start on. But also, why does Iran do this? Because this is how they buy time, because they have no real solid plans. They simply react based on whatever you do to them. The same thing happened in June prior to the 12-day war. Many people familiar with Iran's tactics agree that they're just trying to buy time. So why is Trump going along with it? Because he knows how the rules of the game with Iran work. We remember, he told them last year, you have 60 days. No fluff, no theatrics. You have 60 days. Iran did the same thing. Delay, delay, delay. And what happened? On day 61, they got something they didn't expect. Now you can say, but Trump hasn't currently given them a timeline. And that's correct. He may not have provided them with a timeline, but Trump has a timeline. At this point, I speculate it's a matter of seeing how much Iran is going to mess with him. And he's just going to hit them even harder depending on how much they decide to play. We are also told that Bibi is scrambling to travel back to the US to discuss the conflict in Iran. People, listen. Trump and Bibi are neither scrambling or confused. If this is what they're telling you, it's because many things have already been laid out and planned out for months. You're just getting the press headline they thought necessary to send. Again, if they allow Iran to believe that delaying is causing them to scramble and causing tension between Bibi and Trump, Iran thinks their actions are working. But Trump and Bibi are like parents watching a toddler with chocolate all over their face lie about eating the cake that was in the refrigerator. Iran is claiming that talks with the US are going well, and at the same time, they're continuing to escalate verbal threats. We'll continue to see how this plays out, but as has been said by many, the Ayatollah's days are numbered, and Iran probably doesn't have much time left in their countdown. Now to Israel. As we know, the Olympics have taken off in Italy. The Israeli bobsledding team has been staying in an apartment at an undisclosed location, continuing final preparation for the competition. One night this past week, the apartment was broken into, and their passports and other property were stolen. The team has continued training even after the investigation has been opened, and they are maintaining their high spirits. In Ramat Gan, a bus crashed into a building. 11 people were injured, and one woman was trapped under the bus and ended up in the hospital in critical condition. The investigation is currently underway, and engineers are inspecting the building for collapse risk. We pray for the speedy recovery of everyone involved. Israeli police officers and IDF soldiers intercepted a drone carrying 12 pistols coming in from Jordan. The drone was intercepted as it entered the airspace and it was located. Also near Jordan, a terrorist assaulted a female soldier at a base. The terrorist somehow broke out of his handcuffs and attacked the soldier. Another soldier acted quickly and shot and killed the terrorist. The female soldier in the attack was evacuated with minor injuries. The Bank of Palestine is refusing to close over 3,000 accounts that are allegedly used to distribute payments to released terrorists. These accounts are directly tied to the Palestinian Authority's controversial Pay for Slay program, which gives monthly payments to Palestinians who were imprisoned for carrying out terrorist attacks, as well as to the families of those terrorists who were killed. Israeli authorities have sent explicit demands to close down the accounts. However, it's believed that the banks are being told by the Palestinian Authority not to comply. The finance ministry has attempted to end these payments on several occasions, and the security cabinet will be holding another meeting soon on the issue to come to a more conclusive solution. Now, something lighter. A psychiatrist has found a way to combine his medical practice and his bird watching skills to assist people with PTSD and other challenges that come with age. He's created a photo exhibit where the pictures of birds and other animals allow patients to exist in stillness, which creates presence and opens up the possibilities of freedom, which inspires many patients. The doctor stated it wasn't intended as a personal platform or to promote the works themselves, but to serve as a means of raising awareness about the mental health issues and the ongoing price that's paid by veterans of the security forces and often their families. This exhibit is located at Jerusalem's Herzog Medical Center in the Migdalor Clinic. That's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Please rate, comment, and share, and we will see you on the next one.